back to Genesis chapter 19. And we will finish up today this lesson. As we have been looking at now for a couple of weeks, God essentially, pre-incarnate version here, Christ showing up and meeting with Abraham and Sarah. In chapter 18, we saw about him telling Sarah and Abraham they were going to have a son within the next year. Sarah laughing and being called out on it and all the doubt and things that we talked about in chapter 18. And we're going to go back to the slide a little bit. That, of course, Sarah gave God much less than what it should have been. She didn't think he could do what he said he would do. And then we got into chapter 19, which is where we finished up with last week. And we see these two men now, two angels, going into Sodom, and essentially there to see just how wicked things have gotten. And the first 11 verses, which is what we looked at last week, of course, we saw Lot, and he's there at the gate, and he's become very much intertwined in this society. He's become one of the leaders, essentially one of the judges, and we know, of course, of the wickedness that has taken place in Sodom, and we talked about that as well last week, and we finished up with verse 11 when the men, and Pastor Rob alluded to it as well during the sermon last week, the men and all of it, it says that the men, all of them, of all ages, all of them showed up and wanted to get into Lot's house, or wanted Lot to send out these two men so that they could do whatever it was lustfully that they wanted to do with them. And Lot, of course, we saw last week, offered up his daughters instead, and they didn't want anything to do with that. As we're kind of closing in on Lot, kind of break through the door. The angels struck these men with blindness and confused them, confused their ability to see, confused the reality maybe in front of them, what they looked at. But even then, they were still trying to get to the door. They just couldn't because they had an inability to see it. So we saw just the state, essentially, of what these people, these men, how far degraded the morality had gone in Sodom. Okay? So that brings us to verse 12. So we see now the first 11 verses just how wicked this is. Of course, before any of this, kind of maybe in the same time as this is happening, Abraham is up talking to God and saying 50 people, 45 righteous people, 40 righteous people. Now he keeps going down 10 righteous people, 5 righteous people, so on and so forth. And of course, that doesn't happen. So now we get to verse 12, and we see the deliverance here of Lot. Okay, and before we do that, though, let's look at one more thing before we jump into that. We see in verse 8 of chapter 19. We see Lot offering up his daughters, right? Behold, now I have 2 daughters which have not known man. Let me, I pray you, bring them out, and do ye to them which is good in your eyes. Only unto these men do nothing, for therefore came they under the roof under the shadow of the roof. So Lot's got daughters, and he offers them up to these men. And there were Lot's daughters had fiancés, more than likely, sons-in-law, and were probably espoused here to be with both of these daughters, espoused to be married to Lot's daughters. And the way it's written here in verses 8 and 9 kind of interpreted, the language kind of allows it to be interpreted that way. And that's why we would explain why Lot's daughters, where he told these guys that we're still virgins, they're probably espoused to be married, and that's why he offered them up. So we saw the no laughing matter with Sarah in the view of God, and it's kind of not mentioned a lot. I thought this was kind of interesting. This lesson did this, but it mentions the son-in-laws and how they would, have been there. They may have been in the crowd. Who knows, right? There are some of the men that were there. They may have been out there in the midst of this too. And God said He's going to destroy Sodom. And they would have seen or saw this as a joke because it hadn't happened yet, and they saw God as a joke. Obviously, if Lot didn't think it was going to happen, if Lot knew that this destruction was coming or heard of this before and didn't seem to care, showed up right into Sodom and didn't think it was going to happen. The son-in-laws probably done the exact same thing about this whole idea of Sodom being destroyed. It's not going to happen. Therefore, they would have had no fear of God at all. Okay? And thought it was the fact that was even there or mentioned would have been a bit of a joke. Sodom was a pretty big, powerful city at the time. Probably nobody thought anybody was coming to destroy it. So they would have seen this as a joke as well. And therefore, consequently, as we see here, would not have feared God in no way. And they would have not had an example of the fearing of God either from Lot, as they should have. Right? As they should have. Lot should have been an example to them. They were going to be essentially sons-in-laws eventually. But that was not the case. Okay? So now that brings us to Lot's deliverance here in verse 12. Okay, so let's start and look at verse 12. And we see more about that. That's what I was trying to get to. Sorry. More about the sons-in-law. Sorry, my slides backwards. It should have been accurate. Look at verse 12. And the men said unto Lot, Hast thou any besides son-in-laws in thy sons and thy daughters? And whatsoever thou hast in the city, bring them out of this place. For we will destroy this place, because the cry of them is waxing great before the face of the Lord. And the Lord hath sent us to destroy it. And Lot went out and spake unto his sons-in-laws, which married his daughters, and said, Up, and get you out of this place, for the Lord will destroy the city. But he seemed as one that mocked unto his sons-in-law. That's what I was trying to get to. So we see in verses 12 there through 14 that the sons-in-laws, when Lot, these two men, angels, were here, and told them destruction was coming, and Lot as well, we see them thinking this was pretty funny. There's no way that God could possibly destroy it. The city that actually, as we saw, thought it was a joke, had no fear or respect for God because they, again, didn't believe He was real or just wasn't worried about it in any way at all. Okay? The word that's used for Sarah's laughter back in chapter 18 is the exact same word that is used for the son and sons-in-law, their laughter as well. Okay? As we saw, and he says to them, verse 13, I'm going to destroy this place because the cry is waxing unto them. In verse 14, Lot went out and spake unto his sons-in-law, which married his daughter, and said, Up, get you out of this place. But he seemed as one that mocked unto his sons-in-laws. Kind of the same phrasing that was used there was used for Sarah. Okay, when she was laughing at the ridiculous idea she thought that she was going to have a son in such an old age. Both focused on not who was telling the message. Both focused on, in their eyes, the ridiculousness of the message. Okay. Not the fact that there was somebody who showed up who was also very powerful that told them this. They were more focused on, in their eyes, the ridiculousness of this. Now, the angels, they're trying to hurry Lot up here. They're trying to get him, his wife and his daughters, they're trying to get him to hurry up and leave the city and get out there very early in the morning. Okay, so verse 15, when the morning arose, the angels hastened Lot, saying, Arise, take thy wife, and thy two daughters, which are here, lest thou be consumed in the iniquity of the city. And while he lingered, the men laid hold upon his hand, and upon the hand of his wife, and upon the hand of his 2 daughters, the Lord being merciful unto him, and they brought him forth and set him without the city. So these 2 angels, as we see, are trying to hurry up and get them out. They know that the destruction of Sodom is impending. It's going to happen very, very soon, right? So it's trying to explain a lot that it's very, very important that you all get your hind ends up and get out of here, okay? Because this is everything's about to be destroyed. And as we see them, and I'm sure they have been explaining to Lot the importance of them getting out of there, we see that in verse 16, what happens? What's the first 4 verses, the first 4 words that are in that verse? Linger. So Lot now knows these 2 guys are angels or sent from God. He knows that the destruction of the city is going to happen because he understands who these people are. He understands why of the destruction of the city. You see how bad things have gotten. He just went through an event the night before where these 2 men had to strike all the people outside his house with blindness to keep them from busting down the doors to get in there, to sexually harass them and whoever else I'm sure they could get their hands on. And the next morning, after all this has happened, they're explaining to him the importance of getting out, and he still is lingering behind. Shows just how caught up Lot is in the depravity and the sinful nature of Sodom. And not just Lot, but all of them. All of them were reluctant to leave because they felt secure in their house. They felt secure in this city, and they wanted to linger around. They hesitated, we see in verse 16. Now, they lingered around so much that in verse 16, that while they lingered, the men had to do what? What did the men do? The 2 men. They had to grab hold of their hands and put their hands in a smaller back and push them out. Had to lead them out, grab a hold of them and lead them out, right? Had to actually physically grab them and pull them in the direction that they wanted to go. Okay? The angels lead them out of the city. Now, they were rescued not because of Lot's goodness. They were rescued not because of Lot's willingness to go. They're rescued simply because of the mercy of God. Okay? The last part of verse 16, the Lord being merciful unto him. And they brought him forth and set him without the city. So how do you think Lot here would have responded to the urging of these 2 men if he had had a healthy fear of God? What would have Lot's response been to the urging of these 2 men if he had a healthy fear of God? He's probably leading them out, right? He's probably grabbing them and pulling them out as fast as he can get, as quickly as he can get out of it, taking off running. He would have been the one urging, he would have been the one leading the way, he would have been the one grabbing family members and telling them to get out of town. Verse 17, it came to pass when they had brought them forth abroad, that he said, escape for thy life, look not behind thee, neither stay thou in all the plain, escape to the mountain, lest thou be consumed. Okay, so he finally gets them out of the house, finally gets them on the way out of the city, and the men tell Lot and his family very clear instructions. What are the instructions in verse 17? You know why we're going to take a second to talk about this, because we see the effects of not listening to this instruction in a second. But what are the instructions here in verse 17? Don't look back, right? Escape, don't look back. What else?
Don't stay where you're at, move on.
Don't stop in the plains. Run to the mountains. Keep going. Get as far away from this place as you can get. Right? That's essentially what he's saying. Don't look behind you, head and get us 180 degrees the opposite direction of Sodom, and get there as fast as you can go as far as you can go, and don't look back. That is very, very clear instructions. Alright? Because if you do any of those things, it says at the end of verse 17 what's going to happen. You're going to die, lest thou be consumed. Destruction's coming. If you do those things, you're going to be in the midst of the destruction. So make sure you don't do any of those things. And then verse 18 says, And Lot said unto them, O not so, my Lord. Behold, now thy servant hath found grace in thy sight, and thou hast magnified thy mercy, which thou hast shown unto me in saving my life. And I cannot escape to the mountain, lest some evil take me and I die. Lot protests. The angels tell him what to do, and then he protests here in verses 18 and 19. Oh, not so, my Lord, he says. I just simply cannot escape to the mountain. Lot, keep going here, verse 20. Behold now, this city is near to flee unto, and it is a little one. Oh, let me escape thither. Is it not a little one? And my soul shall live. And he said unto him, See, I have escaped thee concerning this thing, that I will not overthrow this city, for the which thou hast spoken. Haste thee, escape thither, for I cannot do anything till I come unto thither. Therefore, the name of the city was called Zor. So he says, Oh Lord, not so. I can't escape to the mountain. He's begging here. He's begging the men who have just saved his life. He's begging these men that he can just simply stop there in the small town of Zoar, which would have been close, and could spare his life, and he could simply just live there. He was worried that an evil of some type would overtake him in the mountains. And apparently he was scared of what may be in the mountains. And apparently he didn't think the evil that would have been in the city of Zoar was nearly as risky. Okay? Verse 23, the sun was risen upon the earth when Lot entered unto Zoar. So we see that God, in the midst of this, he grants Lot's request here, so Lot could learn by experience that this place of Zoar was no place for him to live either. Okay? So after removing Lot from Sodom now, God rains down the destruction and the judgment that he said he was going to, verse 24. Then the Lord rained upon Sodom and upon Gomorrah brimstone and fire from the Lord out of the heavens. And he overthrew those cities, and all the plains, and all the inhabitants of the city, that which grew upon the ground. So, as they are leaving, obviously not a moment too soon here, out of nowhere. This would have been, we know now this is in the morning, right? They've gotten up and gotten out of there. They're on their way out. I'm sure it was just a regular morning, I would imagine. Sun was up, sky was probably blue. Out of nowhere comes fire and brimstone flying out of the sky. We've seen the pictures and the artist rendition, and probably even imagine what this looked like. I read one person describe this as, it would have looked like a whole bunch of meteorites that just showed up, and God's just, they're on fire, and he's just boom, 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 as many times as he wanted to on Sodom and Gomorrah. And just completely, as we saw in verse 25, overthrew those cities. It didn't just destroy the cities, it destroyed all the plains, all the inhabitants of the city, and that which grew upon the ground, all the stuff they had there as well. All the crops, everything was just completely and entirely destroyed. Rained down this and completely destroyed, just like we said it would. Now, verse 26. So now let's just, again, we know here you just turned to Saul. We know what's happening, right? But let's just talk about this for just a second. These men now have been overly nice to Lot and his family. They've gone above and beyond the call that they should have done to get them out of the city. Really, they should have let them in and let them die. So let's be honest with probably what should have happened. But they have had instructions and knew what they were supposed to do. And they were being very, very good to Lot and his family, explaining to them exactly what's going on. Now, let's put ourselves in Lot's family's shoes for just a second. We've been living in this city. We've got comfortable in this city. We've been comfortable with the sin going on as well. But eventually, as they get us out, I would imagine that at some point, that Lot or one of the daughters or somebody, when the first piece of fire and brimstone showed up right out of the sky, out of nowhere, and we heard the explosion of it hitting the city of Sodom and Gomorrah. You would think that at some point that something would kind of click, right? All right, I can make sure I'm towing the line here. I make sure I'm doing exact. God's been gracious enough to get me out of here, but I need to make sure I'm following exactly what He says to do. Okay? I think that would be a very, very common and reasonable response for anybody, right? Just think of the kids at school. If I jump them enough, eventually I break them and then do what I ask. Okay? And that's essentially what's happened here. There's been enough evidence that these people should have been listening to what these men had to say, that they should have actually listened. And Lot and his daughters did, but for some reason Lot's wife still just couldn't figure it out. So we know destruction is going on behind her. And it's not like this was 4 hours ago these guys told him not to turn around. It was literally just probably come out of the mouth. Don't look back. As the stuff is falling out of the sky, he probably says, don't look back into the mountains. And we see that in verse 25, as the being overthrown the cities and the plains, verse 26, but his wife looked back from behind him, and she became a pillar of salt. So as it starts to happen, she probably just looks and glances back towards Sodom, maybe to see if it was really being destroyed. Maybe because she couldn't believe the place that she loves to live in was being destroyed. Or maybe because she just didn't think that her looking back would cause any problems. Don't really know the state of where her mind was at, but those are all reasons for her to look back. She wanted to see what was going on. She was longing to get back because she thought this is being destroyed, or she just simply thought, they told me not to, but they're not going to matter. Regardless of what it was, all three of those things, wrong reasons, obviously. Regardless of that, though, she turns around and looks, and we see, of course, a pretty famous thing that she turns to salt. If you go to Luke chapter 17, in verse 32, this moment here, this event, stands as a warning to us, even over in the New Testament. Luke 7 and verse 32, as God is talking here. Let's go to verse 31. And in that day which he shall be upon the housetop and his stuff in the house, let him not come down to take it away. And he is that in the field, let him likewise not return back. Verse 32, Jesus says, remember Lot's wife. So he uses this as a teaching point because this event, this woman turning to salt, people knew this happened, right? And I think, Pastor Rob mentioned this a couple weeks ago, that Lot's wife was still there for quite some time. It obviously eroded, but people would be able to walk by and see Lot's wife as a pillar of salt this day. Up until, what you say, like 4...
I read some in our first century church testified that the lump of salt. So
yeah, so that would have been the first, it would have been several hundreds of years, and that this would have been something that people knew, right? So this was why God used that there in the New Testament. Remember Lot's wife, she didn't do what she was supposed to do, and because of that, she got turned into a pillar of salt, right? So we see now Lot's deliverance. Okay, and we get to verse 30 to finish this out. Then in verse 38, to finish up chapter 19, we see the shamelessness now of Lot's daughters. Now, Lot did not live very long in the city of Zoar because he became afraid to live there. All right, now he thought that it would be safer there than in the mountains, but it wasn't there very long because he gets worried. Worried maybe that the residents of Zoar resented his connection to the judgment of Sodom and Gomorrah. It wouldn't have been very far from the pillar of salt that his wife was. I mean, they would have known who Lot was and what happened. So maybe he was worried about that. He felt threatened by those residents. We don't really know. But we see in verse 30 that Lot went up out of Zoar, so he wasn't there very long. He dwelt in the mountain that God tried to get him to go to in the first place. And his two daughters were with him. For he feared to dwell in Zoar, and he dwelt in a cave, he and his 2 daughters. Okay, so for not very long, he lives there, and they finally go up the mountain. He and his daughters go and live in a cave with both of them. Okay? Verse 31. And his firstborn said unto the younger, Our father is old, and there is not a man in the earth to come in unto us after the manner of all the earth. Come, let us make our father drink wine, and we will lie with him, that we may preserve the seed of our father. And they made their father drink wine that night, and the firstborn went in and lay with her father. And he perceived not when she lay down, nor when she arose. And it came to pass on the morning that the firstborn said unto the younger, Behold, I lay yesternight with my father. Let us make him drink wine this night also. Go thou in, and lie with him, that we may preserve the seed of our father. And they made their father drink wine that night also, and the younger arose and lay with him, and perceived not when she lay down, nor when she arose. Thus were both the daughters of Lot with child by their father. And the firstborn bare a son, and called his name Moab, the same as the father of the Moabites unto this day. And the younger, she also bare a son, and called his name Ben-Ammi, the same which is the father unto Ammon, same the father of the children of Ammon, unto this day. So we have the last part of verse 19, chapter 19, just when we thought things really couldn't get worse, things get a little bit worse here. Lot's daughters had lived in Sodom long enough that they obviously had zero moral fiber at all, right? It was just gone. The code of morality of them was just completely gone. There was nothing that they wouldn't do, okay? There was nothing that they didn't see right and wrong anymore. The lines had been blurred so much because of the lifestyle they had been living while in Sodom. And who took them to Sodom? Lot, right? We get back, yeah, these girls, these women make their own decisions, yes, all those things, they err their own ways, but they don't go there in the first place, right? There's a better chance they don't turn out the way they turned out. But Lot saw the lights, bright flashing lights, the neon lights, whatever it was, and he couldn't help it. He had to go see what was there. All right, so they had lived there long enough that the moral code had been completely just gone, and they did not hesitate to get their father drunk so that they could become pregnant by him. They were more concerned here with having children and preserving the family line than they were about the immorality of their fornication and the incest and all the stuff. They didn't know what was going on. You know, the first night it happens, we may be okay, but they show up the very next day and start doing the same thing. Something should have clicked, right? But he doesn't. You can kind of see where he's at here too. So he's just as guilty as they are. We see 2 sons are born to these 2 daughters, Moab and Ben-Ammi, as we saw in verses 37 and 38. And as we will find out, of course, later on, and we know this, that the Moabites and the Ammonites were pretty friendly to the Israelites from here on out, weren't they? No, right? They were one of the great enemies of the people of Israel for years and years and years and years to come. The descendants of Abraham, all kinds of trouble warred with these 2 nations. Now, eventually, both of these nations get judged pretty severely by God, but they still cause the Israelites a ton of problems for quite some time to come. Again, another lesson of the actions have consequences, right? The decisions we make have consequences. This never happens. The Moabites and the Ammonites never show up. And we see we don't have the problems that the Israelites have for the many, many years to come. Choices. Every choice has consequence. We see some pretty poor ones made here by Lot through these couple of chapters and the extent of how bad things got as well. Lot made bad choices when he decided to choose the well-watered land for the herds and pitch his tent towards Sodom. He chose to make himself wealthy at the expense of his own spiritualness, and as a result, he loses everything except his life. Lot did not consider God in the wake of his progressively greater and greater bad choices. And right, next week we will start lesson number 9, and the test of faith. We'll see Abraham, his lapse of faith in chapter 20. We'll start there. And then we see the Ishmael test and the Isaac test. Some pretty cool things kind of happening in the life of Abraham as his faith is being tested. So next week we'll start the next lesson, which is again, it covers chapters 20 through 23. I don't know how in the world we will be able to do all that in one Sunday, but that's what they want us to do. We're not going to do that, obviously. But let's pray. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for another lesson we had here, for the error of Lot's ways, the foolishness of him making his own decision, and how we thought he could do that, and then the consequences of those choices as well. I pray that it's a reminder for us that the choices that we make also have consequences.